Midwife Crisis podcast will touch on sensitive topics regarding the human body, sexuality, pregnancy, and all aspects of women's healthcare and may not be suitable for all listeners. I'm Kate.
And I'm PR, and this is the Midwife Crisis podcast Microsode. When I say I'm PR, I always feel like saying I'm Lester Holt. The podcast where you learn it's not just you. This is where we answer listener emails, readdress previous episodes, and importantly, we share our self-care at the end of the Microsode.
So, as you know, this is not a real-time podcast. So by the time you listen to this, what we talk about many times is a little bit older news. But what's happening in the news right now is something that can be a really difficult topic. And I just want to warn everyone that this could be triggering for victims of assault or harassment. So what I wanted to talk about was the life and death of Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old woman who disappeared in South London on March 3rd. She left her friend's house in the evening. She did the things that many of us have done to try to stay safe. She was talking on the phone with her boyfriend. She stayed to well-lit areas, and she wore a bright green raincoat. A week later, police arrested a Metropolitan police officer as the murder suspect, and on March 12th, police identified her body in the woods of a neighboring county.
This story has awoken a hidden fear that all women carry, whether they are cis or trans or femme or butch. The constant fear of being attacked or harassed or assaulted, and all of those sort of events can occur in different scenarios. And it sort of restricts some of your freedom if you're fearful of being attacked at night. The burden of having the onus fall on us isn't really new. Mm-hmm. The Take Back the Night movement started in this country in the 70s, I think the late 70s. I was in college, and I remember seeing it stenciled onto sidewalks to protest the violence and sexual assault against women. And the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too movement, started by Tarana Burke in 2006, spurred it came from similar ideologies. And basically the premise is that women are not safe. Mm-hmm. And it's just really interesting. Sometimes when I'm driving at night and I think that looks like it would be a really nice place to walk, that it probably smells good outdoors and it's the nighttime sky and all of that. And I thought I would never walk out there by myself. I don't care where the neighborhood is located. I was just thinking, I can't do that. It's just not possible.
It's so true. I grew up as one of three girls, and I still remember my dad showing me how to take a magazine and roll it really, really tightly, because it can be used to jab someone. And he'd tell me, you'd go under their chin or you'd go, under their rib, and this can really do some damage. And I remember thinking, like, what near me can be a weapon? At all times. Even as a teenager, I actually, you guys may not have known this about me, so this is a minor flex, but I am a black belt in Kempo Karate.
What?
Hiya. Anyway, so I was training for my black belt, and I remember learning techniques and things that were specific to women's self-defense. And I remember committing to memory when I heard tales of women who got away. So how did they do it? What had they done? How did they survive? Mm-hmm. How did they trick their captor? I was always thinking things like that. And I remembered, if they survived, I would too, I remember participating in Take Back the Night, a rally that PR had just talked about when I was in college, and marching and chanting down the streets of Buffalo, New York, safe in a pack of women, and then being handed a rape whistle at the end and feeling thankful because there were so many times where I'd be walking home at night and, I'd be having it in my pocket ready to, to blow it. Mm-hmm. I remember my dad gave me a knife to keep in my car, which I have to be honest, I initially used it to cut limes so I could do shots before I went into a bar because those are very expensive. And later, actually, when I was on the way to meet PR, I witnessed a car accident and I used the knife to cut a curtain airbag of a car that had flipped over so I could make sure the person inside was okay.
I remember that.
I've been these women, and I've been groped against my will. I've had people lay on top of me and touch me and snap my bra straps and grab at my breasts. I was actually at a water park over the summer, maybe 2 summers ago, and someone grabbed my butt in the wave pool. And I remember this little like group of, teenage boys walking by snickering, and I felt so violated. And this is not new. This is not just me. When is it going to be okay for us to have our own bodies and our own autonomy and have them really, truly be ours? I'm really over it. I want to know when it's going to be safe. Why do we have to keep grooming girls to be quote unquote safe as if it's their job to stay safe? When are we going to start raising our children to know right from wrong and to keep their hands to themselves, and that no means no, and you need to respect boundaries? Most importantly, I want to know how Sarah's story might have looked different in the media or to us had she been Black or brown or an immigrant or trans or non-binary or any of these marginalized groups that suffer.
And I can tell you, especially for the Black and brown, that girls, they are assaulted. They are sometimes kidnapped. They go missing, and they don't get the same attention as, let's say, and I do not begrudge her. I'm very happy for this young lady, Elizabeth Smart, who was abducted and assaulted, and they went nuts trying to look for her, and as they should have. Right. But as you should for all women in that situation, and that's not the case. It's sort of silent. If you have someone who is like who has immigrated here from Latin America or something, and they go missing, they just go missing. And their families are mourning and sad and looking for them, but not the sort of state or the country is not kind of keeping an eye out per se. And so that makes me a little bit sad. And no group, I don't think, I'd have to look at the statistics, has a higher sort of incidence of assault as trans women. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I think they're quite high.
Their numbers are high in that their situations end in death more often than others, and their incidence of assault more often than others. And it's very interesting. When you were talking about bra snapping, that's something that in middle school I was subjected to. And when did I ever turn around and say, I'm so glad you did that?
Right.
I appreciate that.
How about this? We're taught that that's just boys being boys.
Being boys
I remember being enraged about it. And my mom was like, oh, that happened to me too.
No.
Not like you should be upset. No, that happened to me too. It's not a big deal.
And the tagline of our podcast is it's not just you. So this is happening to women, some who are putting up fights and successfully being rescued and saved or having their perpetrators be prosecuted, and those who have not spoken up or who spoke up and no one listened. And so it's not just you. There are many more folks in that same predicament. And that's what Tarana urged survivors to speak out against assault, and sexual and otherwise, because that is the way we're going to get the numbers for people to hear the roar. They're not going to hear the quiet. They're going to hear the roar. Right. And so one of the results of this movement, #MeToo, was that women realized that they are not the only ones. And I remember adding that on my social media sites, #MeToo, because that's what they asked us to do if you were a person who had been subjected to any of this kind of stuff or been assaulted or anything. Right. And for those of us raising boys, I've raised 2 boys and a girl, we have to teach them young, just like you want to teach them to be anti-racist at a young age, because that's stuff that's they're groomed for. And so they have to respect women. They have to ask for consent. They need to not and abide by it, and whether it's yes or no. Well, if you change your mind and you don't want to, then the yes doesn't turn into a yes. But anyways, the permission has to be there. And their bodies, like, we don't go around, even in middle school, no one was going around grabbing boys by their crotches. And so the reason that the onus is on us is because we have to do our due diligence as mothers of boys who will someday be fathers and partners, that certain behaviors are not acceptable. It just is not. If you aren't going to do that to your granny, then don't do it to anybody.
Yeah.
Don't do it to anybody.
Absolutely. And I think that also brings up this thing that we hear, and we hear this in matters of racism, like not all white people. And we also hear this in, these types of matters, like not all men. And, I have seen even the most progressive, like quote unquote liberal dude friends be like, well, I mean, I would never do that. Or like, you would tell me if I blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's like, it's not my job to tell you that you're being inappropriate or that you're disgusting me right now.
Right.
If I want to share with you, I will, but you need to be able to self-regulate your behavior. You are an adult. And just because it's not all people doesn't mean that you're somehow excluded. Like at the end of the day, we all have to be aware of these issues, and I see it even in my boys right now are 5 and 8.5. And I can't tell you how many times they'll be, wrestling or rolling around with each other. And one of them will say, no, stop. And if they don't stop, I will say, hey, you need to stop because no means no. And people are like, oh, well, that's different. No. It's not different. You're teaching boundaries. Boundaries need to be taught. And, I have to sometimes say to my kids, I mean, I'm beyond snuggly. Honestly, if my kids wanted to be in my bed till they were 25, I'd be fine with it. Like, that's like how I feel. But at the same time, like, I've had to say to them, hey, like, I'm going pee right now and I would rather be alone in the bathroom, and, teaching them that boundary, and vice versa. Like, my kid had to start asking me to wear pants because I would just walk around the house with no pants on. And finally he was like, I would really love it if you wore pants, and it's like, you know what? Great. We're teaching each other. We're listening to each other's needs and we're addressing those. And I think it is so, so important. So I guess my bottom line here is you're not alone. If this is triggering for you, if this is awakening something in you. I mean, I remember during many of these over the last couple of years, we get ebbs and flows, right?
Yes,
and
we do.
And I remember in one of these, I had this like repressed memory of being like literally assaulted in an elevator. And I was like, oh my God, I had shut that down into this little thing. And I felt so upset and gross about it that I just like put it in some protected space. And, when are we going to address this,
Yeah, and it needs to be addressed. Like muscle memory, you want to do it on the regular, like daily, and just make it a lifestyle, not just like, oh, he got in trouble at school because he couldn't keep his hands to himself, and so you're addressing that issue. No, it needs to be just a habit, like brushing your teeth, like help your kids learn to be better people. And to say boys will be boys, that is a phrase that just makes me twitch because what does that mean? That means that they just get to do whatever they want to other people without consequence because of their gender? No.
And we've seen it time and time and again, and this could be such even a tangent on something else, but right now in the news as well, there's been all these, there's lots of statewide sort of legislation trying to be pushed through on abortion regulation. And, yesterday they announced in Texas that there's, a Republican someone trying to, make it punishable by law for a woman and the person who provides the abortion care. And in Texas, they have the death penalty. And so that could be leading up to death. And I just, I sort of asked this question on my social media, if this was about life, if we're about protecting a life and we're worried about this life, then why are we willing to take two in its wake?
Right.
So I just feel like there's a suppression in women, and it's not just women. It's, like we said, femme people, it's trans women, it's, in all communities we see it, but it needs to be addressed. And I think if we have, as we talk about with everything, if you have the privilege and you have the voice and the ability to speak up, we have to speak up, because I have to hope and dream that at some point something's going to stick.
Yeah. And that there will be a paradigm shift, a change in just the way in which we are comporting ourselves in the community and looking out for folks around us. So, that's our little soapbox for today, except that it's not a soapbox. It's a billboard. It's a poster. It's a flyer. It's in every way you get information. It's a social media announcement that we always say know better, do better, but just try to self-reflect, because I think that that's really important as a parent to not just teach. So we teach our daughters to protect themselves and then put the onus on them to be protected. And then ask, why did you walk in that park in the dark by yourself? And why did you? That isn't really fair. We blame the victim.
Why didn't you wear your steel underwear?
Your chastity belt.
Why didn't you keep your chastity belt locked?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it is. It just really is something that makes me sad. Although at the same time, I feel like I read a quote once by Maya Angelou, and she said, I must have done something right in a previous life because I'm a woman. And and I'm paraphrasing because, she says things so eloquently, or did say, God rest her. But yeah, I just, I'm grateful that I am who I am, and that I don't sit around saying, well, I wish I was a man so we could do X, Y, and Z, because we are strong and we are powerful, and we need to just use that and use our voices to give ourselves something better.
Yes, love that.
She's singing again.
All right. So just as we do in every Microsode, we're going to visit the self-care corner. So we're going to talk about how we have loved ourselves and improved ourselves and made space for ourselves in the recent past. So
I'll go first because working around COVID-19 patients, so they come to me and it's essentially like the emergency room. So they don't necessarily know they're positive, and they don't come saying I'm sick with COVID symptoms. They'll come for some other obstetric issue, and then we have to admit them and test them, and then we find out that they're positive. So there's a lot of protection of yourself that's going on around that, because basically you're assuming everyone you encounter is a positive person. And it made me anxious about the possibility of contracting the virus. Like, if I'm going to work with these people, which I absolutely am going to work with these people, at the same time, given I have a bunch of a bunch of health conditions that require some TLC. And so I feared that if I came down with the virus, that I might not survive it, just because I had so many maladies or comorbidities, or all kinds of words you want to call it, that would complicate the whole thing. And so I said, what can you do? Because you're going to work with these people. Okay, protect myself. So I, use my PPE, and we can even post a picture of me in the PPE on the floor.
So many cute ones.
As if you could tell, because you can't even see who I am underneath all that stuff. But of course, do that. But what else can I do to make it better for myself and protect myself if I were to come down with the virus? Aside from now being vaccinated, but prior to that, I decided your nutrition is not what it should be. And that's easy to do where we work, because you're staying up late and you're eating all kind of snacks and you're doing just a lot of things that aren't good for you. You're not getting enough sleep.
And classically, self-care with nurses tends to be baking and feeding each other.
Yes. And then going out with your friends and drinking alcohol.
Right.
So I reformed my diet, and I improved my nutrition, and I began to exercise. And so my thing is rowing. I like kayaking. And so I got a rower for my house because I wasn't going to go into anybody's gym. And I've been rowing. And so I feel much better. I feel stronger and lighter and not as afraid, because I'm ready to fight. I'm getting myself in fighting form.
Love that.
And it's not about, people were like, hey, you lost weight. And so, if you're a more mature person, they want to, are you sick, or did you do that on purpose? Which I think is a stupid question. So as soon as they say that, I just say, yeah, on purpose. That was a result of the changes that I made. It was not an intention to have like a goal that I was going to get to. It just sort of happened as part of the process. And like I said, I feel lighter and stronger, and I'm just not as afraid. I'm like, I'm ready for you, COVID.
Queen status.
Bitch.
Yeah, love it.
Anyways,
she's taped up those knuckles.
Yeah.
She's ready to throw down.
I'm ready.
But also she's vaccinated, and also we don't want to get sick at all. So
that's right. I'm ready to duke it out. But yeah. And so it's something that I would highly recommend to folks. Just, show yourself love by taking better care of yourself.
I'm so proud of you, because it's a constant decision you have to make every moment of every day. And it's so hard.
It is hard.
It's burdensome work. And also something we tend to do as a community of females, I wish we didn't, but we do, is treat it like a threat. You know, and I think a lot of times when people are like, oh my God, like I've also been getting like, you're so skinny, you're too skinny. That, and it comes from a place of concern for themselves, like as if they're not going to be able to be their best selves because you're being your best self. And guess what, guys? We are going to be our best selves when we're all there together and we're lifting each other up, you know? So yeah, it's not a pie. There's not limited slices.
Right, a pie. And today, oh, well, this won't air at that time, but today is Pie Day.
3/14?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's so funny.
So my self-care is enormous, and it's sort of hard to share, but I want to because it's been so transformative. Because I've been literally ill with anxiety. And I had sort of touched on this in a recent episode and talked about therapy and things like that. But I finally, within the last month, got meds. I got medicated for my illness that is invisible. And anyone who knows me knows this is such an enormous step because I felt previously wronged by the mental health industry. And I was really scared to lose myself and, you know, not be the same person I was. And also when you have anxiety, your anxiety tells you things like, well, you're anxious to protect people. And if you're not anxious anymore because you're medicated, then you won't be able to protect the people you love. And like just ridiculous nonsense. And I feel so much better. And I'm so frustrated that I didn't allow myself sort of this luxury of a quieter inner panic demon. You know, I could have done this. I'm like, I could have done this like a long time ago and coped so much better. And I wish I had.
Well, it could be 20 years from now and then you're starting to do it. So you're still ahead of.
It's so true. But I can even say as, you know, it takes a while for things to take effect. But I can say even as the most recent passive about 2 weeks ago, I was unwell and PR and I are very close and we were supposed to record. And I just said, like I'm physically ill with it right now. I just was in the deepest depths of anxiety and panic, and she is amazing, and she supported me and checked in with me every day, and it slowly got better and better and better, and I'm feeling great. And you know the way I know, and I was worried to not know, and so I just want to share this because it's really silly. But if you're out there wondering how will I know, the other day, I went to pick up a takeout at a restaurant, still too scared to eat at one, but I did it. So I'm sitting in my car and I saw a teenage boy sitting outside. And as I was watching him, I sort of got this little feeling in my stomach. And I thought like, gosh, what is that feeling? But then I realized that normally this would be totally triggering for me because so much of my anxiety has to do with my children and my fear of them being lost or being, you know, abandoned or forgotten or uncomfortable or anxious or anything that they may have that feels not great for them. That was so triggering for me. I was always scared of that. And being medicated, you know, I was able to be calm and rational and just see like, this is just a kid picking up food. And then he picked up his food and got in his parents' car. And like, it was totally fine. And I really would have wasted like 10 minutes and who knows how much like GI distress being totally freaked out for this kid. And so, you know, the car pulled around. Like I said, he got in the car. I was like, I'm 99% sure he wasn't abducted. He looked like he knew those people. And I just was able to save myself heartache for literally no reason. And it feels so good. So I just want to say
that's an amazing testimony.
Thanks, meds.
And it's important. It's important for our listeners to know that it's not just you. In this case, it was Kate, and she addressed her issue and got some assistance and kept testing the system until she got a good fit for herself.
Yeah.
And you don't always get it right the first go round, but because it's you and you're important, you don't want to give up on that. And so
yeah.
We do a good job of taking care of everybody around us, but then when it comes to taking care of ourselves, and I kind of looked at it for me and for you, what would you do for your children? Because anyone who knows me knows that I would lie down on a highway for my kids, and just with trucks coming down the road. I would do that's all to say I would do anything for them. So what if you were like one of your children? What would you do for them? What is the best thing that you could do for them?
Yeah.
And that was what led me to the changes, and not having the changes feel like I was being punished.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in your case also, you would not have your children have this kind of anxiety and have issues going on, and you would not try to help them or get help for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to
And also,
do that
like I
for
said,
yourself.
I did the things I felt like I should have, I did the therapy and I
Right.
put in the time, and
Right.
it wasn't enough. And it was so hard for me to understand that it was something that I couldn't control, because so much of being anxious and having generalized anxiety is about like the difficulty balancing reality
Yes.
and what you perceive as your reality. And, I feel great. And I know it may not be the end all be all, but I'm so relieved and excited. And I just want to
for you.
thank you. And I just want to encourage anyone out there who's scared to really talk, because also much credit to my friends and family who know me and were super supportive and promised me that if I became a weird zombie that they would tell me.
For sure.
And also my amazing FNP, who's also my friend, who was like, you don't have to live like this. We can handle this. And checked in with me so frequently and said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And when I wanted to take a lower dose of medication, she was like, that's fine. It's not going to work. And guess what, guys? She was right. But she still let me go on the journey I needed to go on to get where I am. So I'm so thankful to everyone. And that's really it.
I'm so happy she's singing again. After every thought, she's got a song for you. So that's a sign. That's definitely a sign of her, of the brightness that's shining on her life right now.
That's right.
Well, we're glad you tuned in, and we'd like to thank Baobab Tree Studios, our friends, family, and you who make this podcast possible and make us want to do it.
That's right. Please be sure to subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Android, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Midwife Crisis Podcast, and email us. Please email us. We want to hear about your victories and triumphs. We want to hear about your self-care. We want to hear about your thoughts on any issues we talk about. All emails are welcome. Also, please let us know if you want us to, if we do address you, if we want us to keep you anonymous or not, because we're, of course, happy to do that as well. And that email address is midwifecrisispodcast@gmail.com.
So until the next time, of course, I'm always going to say wash your hands, and then take care of yourself so that you can care for others.
Yep. And just, if you feel like going on that med trip and take that journey. Don't be scared.
Adios.